It is time to get out of the field. Hi, my name is Michelle Kline. I am the founder of DogCo Launch and the host of the DogCo Secrets podcast. And today I want to talk about getting you out of the field of your pet care business once and for all. All right, so for years, I played a yo-yo dance with my business where I would get out of the field. Finally, if this is something you've struggled with, I know you know that feeling. You work so hard to get out of the field, from doing visits, from being so in the business. I would finally pull myself out. And then almost immediately, something would happen that would pull me back in. I'd maybe make it a day, a week, a couple weeks, and then I would be right back in the field really consistently. And it was so incredibly frustrating because it felt like my time was not my own. You know, when I first started, I was a solopreneur, like many people who start pet care businesses. I realized that I could make money doing this. I started as the sole service provider. And then as I started building a team, the administrative and leadership requirements of the business started growing too. And so I felt, and I know I'm speaking your truth. If you own a pet care business and you have a team, this tension starting to grow of where my time was going, which was still as a service provider, and where my time needed to be going, which was towards tasks that actually grew the business, built the infrastructure, and helped everything run smoothly by not being in the field. I needed my time going elsewhere. Even more than that, I began to realize that my time, by going to me being in the field rather than working on the business, it was actually constricting the growth of my business pretty substantially. So today, I want to talk about strategies to get you out of the field once and for all. Okay, so about 3.5 years into my business, around there, maybe 3, I realized that if I didn't make some pretty significant changes, I was not going to be able to get out of the field. I had been trying for about a year, trying unsuccessfully. I kept getting pulled back in. I would finally feel like I had dialed stuff in, and then I would have a staff member quit, or we'd get more clients, which I had been working to get, but I didn't have anywhere to put them other than my schedule, and it was incredibly frustrating. It was actually my least favorite season of running my business because I knew my time could be going to better places. And so it was starting to actually create some resentment around going into the field and working with clients, which was creating a lot of guilt because I never want to feel resentful towards an animal and the way that my time was going. And so I was starting to feel really uncomfortable with the resentment I was feeling, with the frustration I was feeling, but I knew my time needed to go elsewhere. And part of the problem was the reasons I'd get pulled into the field were really legitimate. Are you a pet care professional that wants to scale your business in 2025? I'm so excited to tell you about the DogCo Business Summit, a conference dedicated exclusively to scaling pet care businesses, which will be in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, September 26th through the 28th. If you are looking to scale your pet care business this year, this is the conference for you. I have pulled together the very best people I can find to help inform our industry, to educate our industry, and to help businesses get to the next level. With speakers like Jamie Troll and Joey Coleman, you are sure to take home really actionable information to put into your pet care business to help you grow. Tickets are on sale now at dogcosummit.com. Get yours before it's gone. It's not like there was someone, most seasons this wasn't the case. Like, it's not like there was someone on my team that just consistently called out. So I then had to it's not like there was an easy problem I could deal with. Usually it was like very legitimate things, like the business was growing. There wasn't any extra space. We were trying to keep up with hiring. But even so, that doesn't mean it wasn't a problem that needed to be fixed. It actually, because it was such a legitimate issue every time, it clearly was a part of my business that needed a lot more structure, support, in order for the business to grow healthy and for it to not command all of my time. When our time is going as the owner into lower leverage areas of the business, the byproduct of that is it constricts growth because your time as the owner is the most valuable thing that you have. Time is the most valuable thing any of us have. It's the one resource we can't manipulate or change or grow more of. Time is time. So the leverage behind where you choose to put your time, where your time goes, is incredibly important. And the bigger your business gets, the more important it is that your time is leveraged appropriately. So I reached a breaking point where I was talking to my husband and I was like, I have to figure out how to do this. And he said to me something that really changed what I did moving forward. And he said, you know, Michelle, every time we've gone on vacation, you've figured out how to keep the business, or anytime we've gone out of town, you've figured out how to keep the business going, even though you weren't here. He was like, I think you really need to pretend you don't live here anymore. Like, pretend it's just not an option and really try and believe that for you to go into the field to kind of rescue the day. And I think that word rescue was really important because what I was doing was letting myself be the rescuer in all these situations rather than the planner and the strategizer looking forward to actually grow the business and to keep it moving without me kind of putting it on crutches of like, well, I could just take it. I could just take it. I had to actually figure out higher level problems. So this led me to taking a step back and really figuring out what it would take to get me out of the field moving forward. And what I discovered is that I needed margin somewhere in my business model. And that is what I am going to be talking about today, is incorporating that margin so that you can get out of the field. Okay, so maybe to state the obvious, this is a delicate business model. There has to be margin somewhere because when you are doing a business model that is a one-to-one, which is one service provider working with one client at a time, there's very little margin there. The line is very thin on your staffing of how many people you need. And when there's not margin, by default, the owner ends up being the place that carries that margin. But that doesn't have to be where the margin exists. So there are 3 places we can incorporate buffer or margin into the business so that we don't constrict growth, but also don't end up in the field consistently. All right, number 1, we can put margin in the team. So my recommendation would be if you want to put margin in the team, we look to be slightly overstaffed for the work that we know we are going to have come in and the work that we are going to need. So when the margin exists inside of the team, this looks like staffing slightly above what you have on the schedule so that you can handle turnover, same-day requests, and new client inquiries. When teams choose to put the margin in their team, or like when a business chooses to put the margin in their team, I recommend we look for about a 20% buffer. So we staff your current people at about 80% of their capacity. How do we know what 80% is? Well, it's a combination of the hours that people offer you with also tracking the data of the appointments on the schedule so that you know within a certain degree of reasonable expectation how much work is going to be on the schedule for a given week. There's a spreadsheet we used in my business to track this that I am going to include as a free download for this episode, where you can keep track of how many people you actually needed in the field for different time blocks so that you can staff appropriately moving forward. That helps us know when are we at that 80%. How do we know if we have 20% buffer? We track our data. So that'll be in the show notes if that would be helpful for you. So if you are going to put margin in your team, staff them or give them about 80% of visits to their availability. Then you have about 20% margin where you can just have buffer for more that comes in. All right, second place we can put margin on your team is in a middle management structure. This is my preferred way to do it. So this would be when we have an admin that is supporting the administrative functions of the business, but they are local and they are able to go into the field to take overflow or to help the team in person if they need it, because that's also another version of what brings you into the field, instead of you being the one to go. So it's a very pliable position. They can support the administrative functions, which this is an administratively heavy business model, so that's a win. but they also can be that protective layer between the team in the field and your time. So when you are at the revenue point where you can afford to do that structure, and it's probably earlier than you think, just because if they're in the field, they're offsetting some of their costs. This would be my recommendation of how to do it. Now, it's critically important that your managers are local for this to work. I've worked with some businesses where the manager has been remote, maybe it's been a VA, and the sad reality of that is that means you as the owner are still probably going to be the buffer unless you have really dialed in your staffing levels and making sure that you have enough people in the field and enough people on your team, which can be very delicate. That can be, one person quitting and then all of a sudden you're back in the field again. Like we all know that pattern. So if you can, I highly recommend admin, like any labor for your business is actually in town. The one exception to that would be your bookkeeper. And I have some great recommendations on bookkeepers for the pet care industry if you need one. All right, final place you can put margin is going to be in the owner's role. By default, if you do not have margin in the team or margin in some middle management position, margin will end up being with the owner. Now, there's a season where this may make sense. You may intentionally choose this. Specifically, if your business is not yet big enough to afford middle management, and you don't, specifically if you don't yet have that middle management tier, and if you're still figuring out staffing levels for your team, you may choose okay, for this season, I as the owner want to absorb the buffer because I want to keep my margins really tight and I want to make sure I really have this dialed in. The other reason that you may choose to be the buffer and to still be in the field is purely from a cash flow standpoint. And that's really going to be determined by the size of your business. So healthy margins in this industry for a fully team-based pet care business where the owner is not in the field at all is going to be between 20 and 30% on average. I've seen people do above 30. I've seen people do under 20. That 20 to 30, though, is a pretty sweet spot that we want to aim for at least, if not more, but at least that 20 to 30. So depending on the size of your business, that may just not be enough money yet. If your business is under $100,000, for example, say it's doing $100,000 in revenue, average profit margin or a usual profit margin for a business at that size would be $20,000 to $30,000 a year. And unless making that amount of money works for you, which probably doesn't. Most people I know need to be making more than that. You'll need to be in the field some until you have the volume to transition out. So that can be a reason that owners also choose to stay in the field for a season. But I would encourage you, at some point, you will need to make that transition and you'll need to readjust your relationship to the business to working on the business and not just in it. And I hope this episode gave you a little bit of a pathway as to how to do that.